Hello, hello. Today we are going to talk about what is normal. Everybody likes to be normal, to know what normal is. And there's some really good things about being normal, right? There's some good things about being an outlier too, but we like to know what normal is. Am I normal? So we're going to talk about, this is a brainy podcast, talking about how our brain works to understand what is normal for a human brain, because you've got a human brain and it is interacting with another human brain to form a relationship. And that's either a nice, fiery, warm relationship or a nice, fiery, dangerous, hot relationship. So let's figure out what is normal. First, I'm going to just say, there's no such thing as normal, right? Normal is just something we kind of make up. It's kind of a narrative that gets told oftentimes over and over again. Sometimes it is based on something very factual, like 6 out of 10 people do XYZ. And so we call those 6 people, quote, normal. Although you could also say it is normal that 4 people do this other thing. Like when you have 10 things happening, it is normal that 6 will do this and 4 will do that. It doesn't mean that the 4 are abnormal. So I just say that because as I go through some of the examples today, there's many different ways to interpret them. And so I don't want to present and to say, what I say is the way it's supposed to be. It's a way, it's a interpretation of the world. And it's really just important because we are fed messages all the time of what's normal, right? When we are just all the media that we're exposed to, how many of us who grew up female, right? All the images that you see of females, and we have in our head, because we see it so often, that is normal. And then there's a lot of self-hatred that goes on, body hatred, body stuff, right? For girls and women, when there's this idea of normal. So that said, if the way I talk about the relationship doesn't mimic yours, it doesn't necessarily mean you're abnormal. I'm just going to tell this story in this sort of way to help illustrate the points of how the brain operates and what an average brain does. All right, with that caveat done. So one very, quote, normal story of how relationships go is that in the beginning, they're really exciting, right? There's lots of sparks of joy when you're together, right? You're like, oh, they come near and you get butterflies in your stomach, or a lot of maybe excitement, dramatic excitement of, are they going to call? And what are we going to do? And it's romantic. And it's just full of all this joy and energy and interest. And then as your relationships develop, you start to integrate your lives and integrate your daily activities. And things become a bit more mundane, right? We just kind of get into a habit cycle of being with each other. It doesn't have that, exciting spark and flare anymore. And then there's the passage of time and going through different life cycles, right? Job progression, kids, changing health status. And then finally, the normal trajectory of a relationship is that there's an ending. Either it's an ending on purpose with a divorce, or it's an ending by one person dying, right? That particular relationship in its planetary human form comes to an end one way or another. So we kind of see this as like, this is a typical normal relationship, let's say. Now, the thing that stands out to me when we think about a normal relationship is that There's only one phase that's really marked with a lot of energy and positive emotions. We call it falling in love, right? The key here is the falling part. Falling, like when you fall off of a diving board into a deep pool, there is great excitement. There's a lot of energy that goes into falling in love. Some of that excitement is described as really joyful, right? It's so exciting, positive. And some of that is described in the negative as it's scary. Oh my gosh, am I going to smack onto the water? That's a real high energy, the thrill or the drama. It all depends on how we think about it. How you think about the excitement phase and that energetic phase is really what dictates how you feel during that phase, right? It's equal energy, right? Nervous excitement and nervous pleasure, right? They have a very same energetic feel, but there's just we put a positive spin on it or a negative spin, depending on our interpretation. So that excitement, like jumping off a board, may be like the beginning of a relationship, right? There's a lot of excitement and energy because there's all this newness to what's going on. And then we could say, when you land in the water, for those people who know how to swim and know how to let the water support them, that can be that sort of slow time, right? Of just going into that habit phase of your relationship, the more mundane part of just hanging out, letting the water hold you after you have this thrilling fall into the water. So let's switch this over here and take a look at how the brain works, because this illustrates the two basic modes of operation of our primitive brain, right? Our very base part of our brain, how our brain works. One part of it is that your brain is constantly looking for something that's new and different, right? And there's another part of your brain that really is all about conserving energy. So, beginning of that relationship and the story of the quote normal relationship, that beginning, new and different. Lots of energy is getting used in that phase, in that time, when you're in the place of looking out for new and different. It's the part of your brain, you may have heard it in terms of your fight or flight or freeze, right? It's the part of your brain that's looking for danger and it's looking for, again, anything new or different, because it has to interpret, what does this new and different thing mean, right? Is this good? Is this bad? And then the other part, the conserving of energy. This is where we tend towards habits, right? So when you get into that mundane part of the relationship, okay, this isn't new and different anymore. I can go and just conserve energy and just rely on, they said they would come home. They said we're still going to be in a relationship. I don't have to be freaking out because they're gone for 28 hours or 48 hours. It doesn't mean that something is wrong here. I can just be chill about it and conserve my energy. So I like to look at animals to illustrate these two parts of our brains. Think about your pets. Like one of our pets, we have a cat and a dog. I'm going to use my cat. Most of the day, well, both of them, most of the day are spending their day conserving their energy, right? They're just sleeping, remaining super quiet and still. But the dog does this too, but I love watching the cat. The cat sleeps, it's just asleep on the back of the couch, but he has his little pointy ears up in the air, and you can kind of see they're still just a tiny bit alert, right? every now and then they twitch a little this way and that, like an antenna searching for a signal. It's a calm alert, right? He's got that being on alert so that when something new comes along, like a nice little spring bird, he's ready to pounce, right? And to turn it on. He needs to be at rest, all this conservation of energy, so that he's using full energy when something new and different comes along, be it the tiny little songbird that he wants to go catch or the big hawk that wants to catch him. Right? So this is the two parts of our brains at work. And this shows up in our relationships, right? That we have this part of our relationship that's looking for things that are new and different and exciting, right? And either exciting interpreted positively or exciting interpreted negatively. That depends on the other part of your brain, your higher thinking part of your brain. In your relationship, your brain is also looking for ways to build habits and to conserve energy and to be at ease and at rest, right? Your brain wants to do that. It needs to do that. So it's ready when there's something dangerous happening to be on full alert. So this is a normal way for your brain to act. And so it's normal to see both of these things in your relationships. Now, the big thing about knowing what's normal, right, is to be able to see, well, what's abnormal, what's not working well, what do I need to, come back to normal. So if we can kind of know what's normal, then we sort of measure for ourselves. Am I within the bounds of normal or is this abnormal? So the biggest determiner of is your relationship falling within normal versus abnormal? It's your own self-evaluation. Is it working for you? Right? Is your relationship working for you? Is it what you desire? Is it what you want? Or is it something else? Let me give you a couple of examples here. So it's from my own kind of life, and I bet some of you might identify with it. So when my kids were little, we lived in a place that the library was just in walking distance from our house. We had to go 2 blocks down the street, a neighborhood street. It would put us onto a trail. And then it was a few blocks over to a park and the public library. Perfect outing, perfect activity for me and my toddler and, 5-year-old or however old they were. They're 3 years apart. So newborn and 3-year-old, 2-year-old and 5-year-old or whatever it was. Anyways, so when we would take this walk, the part of my brain that is searching for things that are new and different is highly activated because 2-year-olds and 5-year-olds and 3-year-olds, they do lots of new and exciting and random things. And being the responsible parent, it was my job to be looking out for all of the dangers that could be happening, right? We did have to cross one busy road. So as that 2-year-old, 3, 4, 5-year-old, right, as they're growing, they know the route. They're running towards that light. Are they going to stop? Right? I'm looking for this new and exciting. Going along, when you get down to the trail was right next to a river, right? And that river would change from time to time, right? In the rainy season, the river's really high and fast and right next to the trail. In the drier seasons, the river's low and slow, but there's this big rocky, craggy edge. Looking for new and exciting things. Danger, right? Being a parent of little kids, you're constantly on this cycle of looking out for new and exciting things. And sometimes they're wonderful and exciting things. And sometimes you're just like in overdrive because of all the potential things that can happen. So I got very used to that, became the habit part of my brain, very used to that excited part of my brain, excited positive or excited negative, even such that it would spill over into my relationship, right? So when my spouse would come home from shift, this excited part of my brain that I'm used to being in is looking out for what's new and different with my spouse, right? He sat down with a groan. Something go wrong at work? Is he tired? And do I need to be doing something different? Did I make a mistake? Are they stressed about something? Or, there isn't this space. Well, he just sat down and air came out of his mouth. I'd be on hyperdrive for this part of my brain that was being stimulated all the time. Our first responders can be in that mode too, right? They're in a work environment that potentially they're getting lots of hits of adrenaline, right? It's an adrenaline kind of hit when you have that excitement. Think about, again, my cat, from nothing to go, right? It's a lot of adrenaline that's going through the body. And we can get very used to and thinking it's normal and wanting and seeking out all that kind of adrenaline hit, be it from taking care of little kids all the time or going on calls, having bells and whistles go off, right? And being on call. We start to then be in that mode more than what is really necessary or needed. We get kind of stuck. This is where a normal function of the brain is now slipping into something that might be abnormal because it's not giving us what we really want or need in this case, our relationship, right? It ended up corroding and eroding our relationship, that being on overdrive part of it. So we have this excitement part of our brain, and that is out looking for new things all the time and assessing danger or not danger, danger or not danger. Very useful in parts of our life and in our relationships, and very unuseful when it gets into overdrive. So let's look at the other part that is normal of our brain as well, which is this resting part, right? My dog and my cat, they're spending like 18 hours a day in that resting part, right? Now, we need this. It's an important part of our function. Bringing in, and this is all the stuff that goes into habit land, right? Of just like slow moving habits. Most of us have brushing our teeth in the habit part of our brain, right? Our brain wants to pull things into habit because it uses less energy. So you have more energy for that time when you need to be activated, right? So bringing things into habit is a normal part of being human. I like to think of the brushing our teeth, right? Brushing our teeth is a really reliable habit that we will get into. And it's very useful to not have to think about it very much. In the same way, in our relationships, going from having an exciting and new relationship where you don't know exactly what's happening to being in the habit land of, yes, I know that I can rely upon that we both love and care about each other. And, I don't have to be hyper vigilant all the time of looking beautiful or, having some romantic dinner, right? I don't have to be in that all the time. I can rely upon the habit that we're in a long-term committed relationship and I don't have to be perfect and wonderful and interesting and exciting all the time. So, like brushing my teeth. But like brushing my teeth, I also twice a year go for a checkup, right? I go to the dentist and I get a really good cleaning and get those parts that the habit of brushing my teeth every day that I'm sort of in the habit of skipping over some little parts, or there's some little sneaky places that aren't getting tended to that actually do need to get tended to because they start to fester over time. So we do need reliable, simple, restful habits. Your brain needs that. This is normal. Like I said, we want to watch for when normal tips over into abnormal. Got to get that checkup. Got to get a cleaning into it. For my spouse and I, we're not in that little kid phase anymore. And we were in the habit of crashing out onto the couch every night, right? When we're both home together, or in that time of needing rest, of needing to rely on the habit that, yeah, this is what we need together right now, is not to have fancy dinners and doing big stuff together, because the act of living our lives together was enough at that time, right? There's so much going on with the little kids and whatnot. Now that our kids are older and there's so many other things that are very easy in our lives and more secure in our lives, and we're both more skilled at our jobs, right? And managing our household and our money and all these kinds of things. We no longer need that restful habit of just sitting like sloths on the couch watching Netflix for 4 hours. We still need some of that, maybe not 4 hours, I don't know. But what's going from normal to abnormal, right? It's no longer really serving us. 4 hours one night after another, one pint of ice cream after another, right? It's starting not to be useful anymore. It's going beyond what is needed for the normal part of my brain and going into the abnormal part, that I'm going into being restful, into what a lot of times we call things of being lazy, right? That's a label that we'll put on it. And we have to be very careful with that, because you do need rest. Actual rest is necessary. But going into the place where we're resting more than we actually need, right? This habit, we're not cats and dogs where we need 18 hours of it. This is when you start to call it lazy, right? And being really interested in which is it for me, right? The trick here about rest versus lazy is we don't want to add drama to it, right? We want to add curiosity to it. Adding drama is saying, okay, I'm in the restful part of my brain right now, and I'm relying on a habit of my relationship right now. When we go about, we can add either drama or we can add growth. Adding drama is when we start to make up stories that aren't really helpful to us, that add excitement, right? This is where you look at this part of this restful time and you start criticizing around it, or nagging, or making it wrong. But to grow, if you want to add growth to it, you want to add curiosity to it and start getting curious about, do I need this rest? Is this rest really giving me what I want and desire? what is the parts that are useful about this rest? Because after all, rest is normal. My body does need it. Is this become a habit that is now leaning over into what I want to categorize as lazy because I'm not doing new and interesting things in my life or creating with my partner or with myself? We want to get curious first. This is the difference between brushing your teeth all the time and starting to criticize yourself, like, I don't do a very good job brushing it. This probably doesn't matter very much, versus actually going to the dentist and just being like, hey, I'm curious if I'm doing a good job. Would you help me clean it out a little bit more? And let's kind of analyze it a little bit more and see what's going on in there, right? One way, when you get curious about it, actually takes care of things and makes change and says, oh yeah, there is something new going on over here. Let's make it new positive versus new negative. That you want to get curious in that space and not judgmental in that space if you want to be a person of growth, right? You could also want to be a person who just activates that new and exciting side in the drama side of things. But we want to be, again, see, does that actually give you what you want? Does that give you the best result when you start criticizing, nagging, making your slow habit time wrong? I see this when people are like, just even the way of describing this phase of a relationship that is more about the slow phase of when people start to say it's boring or we've fallen out of love or we don't care for each other anymore, right? This is this negative evaluation versus, again, getting curious. Look how we went into this really habit way of being together because it's necessary and what our brain needed. Now, have we had enough rest? Would we like to do something else? How do I want to think about this time? Getting curious. All right, my friends. So this is a little bit about how that brain works, that primitive brain, active fight or flight, reactive excitement part, and the slow conserving of energy. Both things are normal. It's just really seeing how is it functioning and operating in your life and then getting curious with it. That is your step, right? Every time on the podcast, you want to be in activation. Take this into action. How is my normal brain operating? And is it working for me? Do I like the results that I'm getting from this normal way that my brain is operating? All right. Be committed to yourself. Be present. Show up with curiosity and love. Be in love with yourself. Be in love with the way that your brain works. It's really an amazing thing. Show up with love for yourself and for your spouse. They have a brain that's working like this too. Let's be curious and love it all. I'll see you next week. Thanks so much for listening. Make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you can get every episode. And when you are ready to be in action, come find us. Facebook, Instagram, or our website. It's all the same name, relationshipsonfire.com. We've got that S on there. There's lots of us having relationships. So relationships with an S, onfire.com. Thanks so much. Saying goodbye, your fire and water gal, Cori Myka. See you next time.